Alright, guys, we gotta talk about Microsoft again here today. Since a few days ago they did come out and announce that they are going to be releasing a remake for the original Halo Combat Evolved, titled Halo Campaign Evolved. Which, that wasn't really a surprise by any means, since there's been rumors about this game existing for quite a while now. So that wasn't a shock. But the bigger news to come out of all this is that this game is going to be available on Xbox, PC, and PlayStation 5. Meaning, for the first time in the franchise's history, a Halo game is going to be available on a PlayStation console. Which, I know people have been going through every little detail of the trailer and the gameplay footage that they released for this game, and, sort of tearing it apart and having debates over every little change and whatnot. I'll have links to all that in the description if you want to check that out, but that isn't really what I wanted to talk about here. I want to talk less about the game itself and more about just what it means for Xbox's future as a whole, since this is a pretty historic moment, considering that, Xbox is putting their flagship franchise on their competitors' hardware. Which I guess you would still consider Halo to be their flagship franchise. I still consider it that, despite, the current state of the IP after, their last few releases. I mean, if it's not Halo as their flagship, what would it be? The only other things I could think of that you could even make an argument for would be Forza or maybe Gears of War, and both those have already been ported to PlayStation, so I guess it doesn't really make a difference either way. But to me, this just signifies more than anything that Microsoft just has no interest in selling consoles anymore. Now, I don't think that necessarily means they're going to completely leave the console market, at least not immediately. I know there's been a lot of speculation and, talk about what the future of Xbox holds. Xbox themselves have, talked about they're already developing the, next-gen hardware, and giving little hints and tidbits about the details of it. Which, in my opinion, I can't imagine them just releasing another standard, Xbox console at this point. I mean, the last two generations, they've been just getting completely destroyed by PlayStation. Not to mention Nintendo, because Nintendo's always kind of off in their own little world doing their own thing, so it's not exactly in, apples to apples comparison. But the PS4 and the PS5 have drastically outsold their Xbox equivalents, and there seems to be, no sign of that stopping in the future. So I don't expect Xbox to just put out another console like they've been doing and getting trashed again. Especially with the push they've been doing lately as far as, the Xbox Play Anywhere stuff, and they've been putting out those ads or whatever showing, like, this is an Xbox and everything's an Xbox and it's on your phone or on all these other devices, streaming to your TV or whatever bullshit. So, I think that Microsoft just views it as a more profitable model to just push their Game Pass bullshit onto everyone and are more focused on having that subscription be a thing as opposed to hardware sales. Which, I do think they are going to go ahead and release another console. Obviously, they said they're working on it. I don't think it's going to end up getting canceled or anything. I think it will come out. But like most people, I think it is going to be closer to just a gaming PC as opposed to a more traditional console. Which begs a lot of questions as far as how that's going to work and, things like what the price point is going to be and things like that. If they release sort of like a mid-step between a console and a gaming PC, that's maybe a little less expensive than a gaming PC would be, but, significantly higher than what you would expect a console to be. And, have it be able to play Xbox games as well as, let you access, like, your Steam library or maybe other PC stores like GOG or whatever. If they release something like that, I can't imagine it being, like, much less than $1,000 at least. Especially considering the prices of that, Xbox ROG Ally thing that they put out with ASUS not long ago. the prices on those are high enough, which I know it's pretty much in line with, the other ROG Ally things. But anyway, if they release, sort of a mid-step console PC in between sort of thing, and have it be at or close to $1,000, to me, I don't really see the point of investing in that when you could just put a little bit more with it and get a full-on, gaming rig. That just seems like it would be the better investment to me long term, since obviously a PC could, be able to do more. And with all their big first party IPs being released on PC and now on competing hardware like PlayStation and, a little bit on Switch as well, there's really just no reason to invest into the Xbox ecosystem, I guess, right now, unless I've already been invested into it for years and, have a lot put into it already. So I think this is really just a symbol of Xbox just finally giving up on, trying to push their hardware as hard as they have been. Now, after next gen, if they do, release that sort of mid-step console thing, and it ends up not selling super well either, at that point, I definitely could see Microsoft just completely cutting bait and not releasing any, in-house developed hardware at that point. They might continue to partner with companies like ASUS or whatever to release Xbox branded hardware, but I doubt at that point they would even bother, developing anything on their own, and they might go full Sega at that point and just become a third-party software publisher and focus on all these, heavy-hitting developers that they have under their control now, like the Activisions and the Bethesdas of the world, and just focus on getting those titles out onto as many platforms as possible, while still offering, Xbox as sort of like a storefront platform sort of thing, more similar to how Steam works now. So you'd still be able to have achievements and you'd still be able to, have like the Xbox store and stuff. But you would just be accessing that through other hardware, either through your PC or potentially even through like PlayStation or whatever else. So that's personally just what I'm expecting at this point. Honestly, I hope I end up being wrong about that, because I'm probably the only one, but I actually would prefer them continuing to just do like, a standard game console like one would expect, to be a more direct competitor with PlayStation, because I think that competition is very important. We've already seen, Sony making a lot of very questionable decisions, and that's with what competition they have now. Having even less competition can only lead to more of that, and I don't think that's good for anybody. Now, I'm not a fanboy of any particular console. I'm generally a collector and like to get every console that comes out eventually if I can. And, I have no issue with like Halo or whatever else going to whatever other platform. As far as, people being able to access it or whatever, that's always a good thing. But if the next Xbox console is like that PC hybrid thing, depending on, a lot of the details of it, in general, I don't have much interest in that idea as far as actually owning that myself. Which, to me, one of the big things, of course, is being able to play physical games. So depending on whether or not the next Xbox would have any sort of disk drive, would definitely be a big factor to me. I don't know if they would even bother having a disk drive built into it. I could see them maybe having like a, sold separately disk drive, kind of like PlayStation is doing now on some of their models, where you could get an external drive and just plug it in to be able to, play your backwards compatible Xbox games or something. I don't even know if they would bother releasing any, native games on that gen physically at all. So if they went full digital, that would definitely be a deal breaker for me. I already don't like having to deal with that on PC, and PC is obviously a much more, open platform. So if they go full digital and kind of just a PC hybrid at that point, with all their IPs being released on PlayStation, I would probably just give up on Xbox at that point, and any first party stuff they put out that I had any interest in, I'd probably just get on PS5 or PS6 at that point, I guess, whatever. Or potentially on PC, depending on, where it ends up getting released. Yeah, for me personally, especially since I just actually ended up purchasing a pretty expensive gaming PC, since my old one crapped out, I don't really have any interest in owning sort of a, gimped mid-step Xbox PC hybrid sort of deal. I mean, I did have interest in owning an Xbox Series X, and I may or may not end up getting one of those, considering how they keep increasing the price on the fucking thing. Which I talked about that a few months ago, but since then they've actually jacked up the price again, and the fucking base model is like $650 now, which is completely absurd. I didn't even talk about that at the time because I've had so much going on lately. But yeah, so I may or may not have purchased my last Xbox console. Hopefully I'll be able to get a Series X at some point, but I certainly ain't paying $650 fucking dollars for it. I didn't want to pay the $500 for it. So if I can find that for a reasonable price, I might pick up one of those. But depending on how the next gen works out, I might just have to forego Xbox entirely at that point. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how things unfold and where Microsoft ends up going. I definitely think it is a very real possibility that they will end up going the Sega route and just going full third party. And at that point, I wonder if any other companies would sort of step up to kind of fill that gap and release a more direct competitor to PlayStation. I don't know what company that would be, unless like Amazon or something tries to release some kind of hardware, which, that that could potentially be a entirely different disaster in and of itself. But we'll see how things go. I think it could definitely lead to some weird and unexpected things happening, but you never really know. So anyway, I guess that's all I got to say. So lots of luck to you and yours.